It was supposed to be just another Sunday night broadcast, another routine clash between talking heads. But the moment Jasmine Crockett leaned forward in her chair, eyes steady, the energy in the studio shifted. Mark Levin didn't see it coming, not yet. He was still mid-rant, pounding the desk with the certainty of someone never challenged, surrounded by sycophants. The volume of his voice filled the air, but something else cut through it. Silence. She waited. "Congresswoman," Levin snapped, "you can't deny the facts. This country is being torn apart by." "What are you afraid of, Mark?" He froze, cameras caught it. A split second of confusion widening into panic. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but the question hung there like a guillotine blade. What does that even mean?" His tone cracked. Crockett smiled, not smug, but knowing. "You talk over me, over the callers, over anyone who doesn't see the world as you do, so I'll ask again, what are you so afraid of?" A hush fell over the studio. Even the crew stopped moving. Levin swallowed. He tried to reset, to regain control, but the confidence wasn't there, not anymore. "You know what I'm afraid of?" Crockett continued, voice steady. "I'm afraid of a country where we mistake shouting for strength, where fear hides behind bluster, where a man with a microphone believes he's untouchable until he is." His face reddened, a stammer, a sudden twitch of the jaw, but he had nothing, no prepared talking point, no clever counterattack. The audience watching live felt it, an invisible tremor through the live stream. 1,000 comments fired off in a split second. They'd been waiting for this. Someone finally stood up, not to yell louder, but to speak truth directly without flinching. And for once, the king of the monologue had fallen silent. Crockett leaned back in her chair, not triumphant, just present, honest, certain of who she was and what she stood for. In that moment, it wasn't about politics. It was about power meeting poise, noise meeting truth. Levin blinked. The broadcast clock was still running. But what came next, no one watching was ready for. This wasn't just another panel. It had been hyped all week, advertised as the clash of truth versus bias. Posters plastered across social feeds, clips teased with provocative music, every algorithm trained to deliver the showdown to your home screen. Commentators called it the debate of the season. Levin, the veteran firebrand; Crockett, the rising force. The network had never seen anticipation like this. Days before the event, hashtags like Truth Collision and Crockett vs. Levin trended across Twitter and TikTok. Fans of each personality took to their feeds, declaring victory before the battle even began. Memes appeared, split screens showing Levin as a roaring lion, Crockett as a calm storm. "Can't wait to see Levin destroy this rookie. Crockett's about to school him live. This is the Super Bowl of political debates." Even the network's promo team leaned into it. A clip flashed across the internet, Levin thundering about patriotism, Crockett staring quietly at him before replying, "Patriotism isn't volume, Mark, it's values." The clip pulled millions of views in hours. Producers knew they'd struck gold. They filled pre-roll ads with dramatic lighting, 2 podiums framed like boxing corners. The title card burned across the screen, Truth versus Bias, live. Behind the scenes, the mood was electric. Levin arrived 10 minutes early, crisp suit, chest puffed. He shook hands with staff, dropped casual barbs about career politicians with zero substance. Crockett walked in a few minutes later, blazer sharp, eyes focused. Her team whispered, "He's going to go after your background." She nodded. "Good, I'm ready." Once in the studio, the tension crystallized. The moderator welcomed viewers, reminded them to stay civil in the comments, though everyone knew that was wishful thinking. The first 30 minutes were standard fare. Policy, rehearsed talking points. Levin ridiculed government spending, Crockett fired back with stats and receipts. Then something unexplainable shifted. Levin leaned in, jabbing a finger. "You people want to rewrite the whole country. You don't care about tradition. You just want power." That phrase, "you people," the audience heard it. Crockett did too. Her face didn't flicker, but viewers felt her inhale. A calm before the storm. It was subtle, a tilting of her head, a long pause before she responded softly. "You keep saying 'you people,' Mark. Who exactly do you think I am?" The control room went silent. Producers froze. Suddenly, the stakes were no longer policy, they were personal. It wasn't just a debate, it was a reckoning. On Twitter, a user clipped the moment live. "Watch what happens after this. Levin just murdered himself on air." The comments lit up. "He messed with the wrong one. She's about to flip the table. This is how political careers end." And yet the bomb hadn't even dropped. Not yet. The question that would shatter the facade, shake Levin's performance, and ricochet across the entire internet was still building within her. You could feel it, the fuse was lit, something massive was coming. But to understand the explosion, you need to see the fuse being lit. Mark Levin didn't just appear one day behind a radio mic, he carved a path through the American media landscape like a storm front. Sharp, relentless, unapologetically loud. He built a persona on raw conviction, wrapped in the language of patriotism and wrapped even tighter in the certainty that he was right. Always right. His listeners didn't just tune in, they worshipped him. To them, he was a voice of resistance in a world gone mad, a warrior against invisible elites. His Wikipedia page reads like a highlight reel, best-selling author, bestowed with media awards, syndicated across hundreds of stations. A familiar face on cable news, always ready to fire back with a one-liner sharp enough to draw blood. Clips of his rants have millions of views. His fans adore the rage, the way he leans into the microphone, eyebrows furrowed, declaring that America is being stolen. But there's something else beneath the surface, a pattern, a technique perfected over time. Interrupt, dominate, overwhelm, turn every question into a counterattack, frame every opponent as either ignorant or corrupt. It works. The more combative he gets, the higher the ratings go. Anger feeds loyalty, certainty sells. There are moments that mark his legend, like the time he steamrolled a college professor live on air, calling him a danger to the Republic, while listeners applauded. Or when he called out campaign operatives as traitors, daring them to sue. No one challenged him, not then. Behind the curtain, producers whisper, "You just have to trigger him and let him go." Guests dread invitations not because of the questions, but because of the spectacle. Levin doesn't interview, he overwhelms. He's the loudest voice in the room, and his audience loves the sound of it. He made a show out of owning people. The clips live forever. YouTube titles like, "Mark Levin DSTROIS Liberal Caller," "Levin Annihilates Weak Argument." Even his critics admit he's a master of performance. And that's the key, it's performance. A carefully crafted beatdown, framed like a prize fight where only one fighter throws punches. But beneath the theatrics lies a fragility, a man so reliant on dominance that any challenge feels like an intrusion. A worldview so tightly wound that one unexpected question could unravel it all. He talks about American tradition, but its power he truly reveres, especially his own. And lately, the culture has shifted. People are less impressed by volume. They want authenticity, integrity, courage. Still, Mark believes he's untouchable. He's debated senators, dismantled academics, run circles around activists. He's built a fortress out of words and ego, and every time someone stepped to him, they got flattened. He doesn't just win debates, he crushes the person across from him. That's the legacy. That's the myth. Which is why the producers couldn't believe it when he agreed to go head-to-head with Jasmine Crockett. Why would he bother? She wasn't his usual prey, a new voice, yes, but someone with grit. Someone who didn't feed on attention, but on purpose. A woman who might not play by his rules. But Mark didn't flinch. He smiled that familiar grin when he accepted the debate invite, leaned into his chair during the pre-roll interview and said, "I'm ready for anyone who thinks they can out-talk me." Confidence isn't just a trait for him, it's armor. So why did it crack? He's crushed challengers before, so what went so horribly wrong this time? Jasmine Crockett was never supposed to be here, not according to the script the world tried to hand her. She wasn't born into power or privilege. She didn't inherit a name that opened doors. She carved her own. She was born in inner-city Dallas, in a part of the city that rarely made the headlines unless something went wrong. She grew up with the sounds of sirens and silenced sirens from the injustice outside, silence from the people who had the power to stop it. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a schoolteacher. Both knew struggle and taught their daughter something essential, that adversity can either harden your heart or sharpen your spirit. For Jasmine, it did both. In high school, she was the quiet one until she was. A teacher once called her too emotional when she argued against a policy that punished students for dress code violations. She didn't raise her voice. She raised questions. She made the room uncomfortable, and she won. That moment sparked a fire. She went to law school on scholarship, faced professors who doubted she belonged there, classmates who saw her as competition rather than colleague. She didn't flinch. She studied harder, listened deeper. When others sharpened their skills for courtroom sparring, Jasmine sharpened hers for something deeper, the kind of debate that happens in people's hearts. She became a defense attorney not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Too many people, especially in communities that looked like hers, were being swallowed by a system designed to break them. She fought for the unseen, the unheard, the voiceless. Her first big case wasn't glamorous. It was a teenager arrested on a charge he didn't understand in a system that counted on him giving up. Jasmine didn't let that happen. She tore apart the evidence. She exposed the biases. And when the verdict came back not guilty, she didn't smile. She walked over to that boy's mother, held her hand, and whispered, "You don't owe me a thank you. You owe yourself a future." Word spread. The courtroom became her arena not to win at all costs, but to defend dignity itself. Her path to politics wasn't planned. It was forced upon her. After years of litigation, she saw patterns too big for any one trial. The system needed change, not just defense. Reform, accountability, a voice on the inside. When Jasmine ran for office, she didn't have big donors. She had a community. Volunteers who canvassed until their shoes fell apart. People who believed in her because she had believed in them first. She stood up against the machine and won. In Congress, she didn't become a bomb thrower. She became something harder, a truth teller. Her speeches weren't loud, but they cut through the noise. She fought for voting rights, for economic fairness, for immigrant communities, for the idea that America should live up to its promises. And yet, through it all, her calm unnerved some. They expected fire, but she offered steel. People underestimated her again and again. They mistook quiet for weak, thought empathy was softness. They didn't understand that it was intentional. She didn't need to shout. Her arguments did the work. In committee hearings, when someone tried to rattle her with interruptions, she would simply wait, let the silence expose them, then respond with facts, with lived experience, with undeniable presence. Each time she walked away unshaken, another clip went viral. "This is how you hold power accountable," someone tweeted. "She eats condescension for breakfast," wrote another. Of course, not everyone liked her. Some called her divisive. Others said she was too intellectual for her own good. But Jasmine knew what she stood for and who she stood with. Her roots were deep, her mission clear. It was only a matter of time before a moment came, one that would define her. A moment where truth would face bluster, where dignity would confront arrogance, and all eyes would be on her. So when producers called and said, "Would you debate Mark Levin on air?" she didn't hesitate. Her staff wondered if it was a trap. Her family asked if it was worth it. But Jasmine just smiled and said, "I've spent my whole life speaking truth to people who didn't want to hear it. This is no different." That's why when the lights came up in that studio, she didn't try to match Levin's energy. She centered herself, her posture, her purpose. She let him rant, let the storm build, because she had learned something crucial: storms burn out, stillness endures. And when the moment came when he crossed a line, when the condescension dripped from his tongue like poison, Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned forward, asked that one question, the one that left him exposed, the one she had been brave enough to hold on to for years. Unbeknownst to Levin, she'd been waiting for this moment her entire career. The cameras cut back in with a tight shot of the stage, 2 chairs, a small table, and a single glass of water between them. The chyron below reads in bold, "Live, truth versus bias, America decides who's right." The studio audience fills every seat. They're leaning forward already, sensing something is building. The tension is no longer background noise, it's the edge of the broadcast. Mark Levin looks calm on the surface, but there's a twitch in his jaw. He's already talked for several minutes uninterrupted, making sweeping claims about the decline of American values. The crowd has nodded in familiar rhythms. He's giving them what they're used to. Then Jasmine Crockett carefully pivots. "That's an interesting take, Mark," she says softly, "but it's not accurate." He snaps his head in her direction, eyebrows raised, lips tight. "Excuse me." She turns to the moderator. "May I respond?" The moderator nods, looking slightly nervous. Crockett continues, "You said America is overrun by lawlessness, yet last year crime dropped nationwide. Those are the facts." Levin waves a hand dismissively. "Numbers can be manipulated, we all know that." He leans forward, meeting her gaze like he's preparing for battle. "But you can't deny the collapse of family structure, the attacks on our traditions." Jasmine holds her ground. "The tradition you're defending isn't under attack, Mark. It's evolving. It's the same argument used against interracial marriage, then against LGBTQ rights. Tradition shouldn't be a weapon." She pauses. "Especially not against those who are just trying to belong." The audience murmurs. There's something happening, an emotional thread being pulled. Levin laughs, but it isn't comfortable. Oh, here we go. You're painting conservatives as bigots again. He turns to the audience. This is exactly why the country is divided. People like her play victim when confronted with reality. Crockett shifts slightly but not out of discomfort. Her posture is composed, steady, and people like you hide behind rhetoric to avoid accountability. That word accountability hits differently. It hangs between them like an alarm. Levin doesn't like alarms, he likes control. He jumps in again. I've held public office longer than you've been alive. You don't get to lecture me. She doesn't flinch. That's exactly why I do, because the generations you served are asking what exactly you did with that time. The audience murmurs again louder. Levin's eyes flash with irritation. He opens his mouth to retort, but she isn't done. Let me be clear, Crockett says. I don't question your years, I question what they've produced, who's been protected, who's been harmed. The moderator attempts to speak, but Levin is quicker. Don't lecture me on harm. I've fought for this country since before you were a lawyer. I've written books. I've defended the Constitution. What have you done besides tweet hashtags and chase cameras? She nods slowly, absorbing the insult. I've fought to keep my community safe, to protect voting rights, to give a voice to people who never had one, and if that's chasing cameras to you, then maybe your lens is broken. The audience gasps softly. The network knows what this is. This isn't just a debate, it's a pulling apart of narratives. Levin tries to overpower her next response, but something about her tone forces him to pause. She continues, you say I don't understand tradition. But I know this. Tradition without justice is just control, and fear dressed up as patriotism is still fear. Levin bristles. What are you trying to imply? Crockett turns toward him fully. The studio lights catch her face calm, resolute. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking. If you believe America is broken, what exactly are you afraid is being lost? The moderator looks between them, eyes wide. Levin stares at her, caught between a defensive retort and something deeper he can't control. The audience holds still. You could hear a pin drop between heartbeats. The air shifts. Crockett leans forward ever so slightly. Her voice drops into a calm, undeniable register. And then she asked it. It happened in a moment, a silent second that stretched across time. The room was still. The cameras rolled. The audience leaned forward as though guided by instinct. Jasmine Crockett wasn't raised for theatrics, but this felt like destiny. She said it calmly, almost softly, like someone asking about a missing ingredient in a recipe. Mark, if you say you love this country, then why are you more afraid of its future than you are committed to its people? The words didn't land like a punch. They landed like a mirror-heavy, reflective, inescapable. Levin blinked, then blinked again. You could see the gears turning, searching for a retort, a counterspin, an off-ramp, but the route was blocked. The audience reacted first, a few gasps, a stifled laugh. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Crockett didn't break eye contact, didn't move. Her hair was perfectly still. Levin reached for his glass of water, but his hand shook just slightly. He put it back down. What kind of question is that? He scoffed, but his voice had lost its edge. She didn't answer that, not directly. She let the silence do some work. The moderator tried to interject, sensing tension, but Jasmine wasn't done. You talk about tradition, about borders, about danger. But I've spent my career meeting people who love this country enough to want to make it better. They look like me. They look nothing like me. And they don't talk about America like it's slipping away, they talk about it like it's still being built. Levin opened his mouth, closed it again. He looked off camera as though one of the producers might throw him a lifeline. None did. You could almost hear the control room whispering behind glass. Crockett continued. So I'll ask it again. What are you afraid of? Is it change? Is it losing power? Or are you afraid that the America you say you're defending was never meant for all of us in the first place? A hush swept through the studio. It wasn't silence, it was more like pressure. A weight. Even Levin felt it. That question wasn't just rhetorical, it was a live wire attached to every conversation about identity, justice, and belonging. He tried to pivot. I'm not afraid of anything, he snapped, tone rising as he spoke. I'm trying to save this country from extremists, from chaos, from a generation that values feelings over facts. He sounded defensive, rushed, small. Crockett nodded slowly. Chaos, Mark? You mean the chaos of young people asking for clean air, fair pay, reproductive freedom? You mean the chaos of communities demanding safety without being surveilled? You call that chaos. I call that America growing up. The crowd hummed. Levin shook his head. You're twisting my words. You always do this. You take everything serious and turn it into a social justice rant to get likes on the internet. Jasmine smiled just barely. You're right. I do care about the internet. It's where a lot of people like me finally got to speak without permission. A slight laugh rippled through the crowd. Levin adjusted his tie, leaning back as if to create space between them. It wasn't enough. And for the record, she continued, I didn't twist your words, I just asked a question, one you didn't answer. She paused. Why are you afraid? Levin's frustration boiled. He launched into a frenzied rebuttal lists of grievances, depictions of moral decay, warnings about the end of civilization. It was loud, chaotic, exactly what Jasmine's question had exposed, fear wearing the armor of indignation. Twitter erupted, clips posted in real time by people watching. Crockett just body slammed him with one sentence. She asked the question every marginalized person's been screaming for years. This is history. The moderator tried to regain order. Let's keep this on track, he stammered. Crockett politely nodded. Levin threw up his hands, muttering about bias. This is why real Americans tune out, he said. They're tired of being lectured by people who have never sacrificed anything. Jasmine tilted her head. I've sacrificed plenty, Mark. I've risked my safety, my reputation. I've stood in courtrooms where no one wanted to hear my clients' names, let alone their stories. She softened her voice. What have you sacrificed, besides your time on the air? The crowd reacted with a low exhale. You could feel it, the cultural pendulum shifting inside that room. A woman in the second row shouted, She's dragging him with kindness. Someone else tweeted it immediately, and within seconds it became a pinned meme. Levin's face reddened. That was the thing about being the loudest voice in every room. One moment of unplanned silence reveals everything. He tried one last time to gather himself. You want to paint me as some villain? He began. No, Jasmine replied. I don't need to paint anything, I just ask questions. The answers paint the picture themselves. The audience felt that. And as Levin looked around at the cameras, the crowd, the shimmering moment, he seemed to suddenly realize something chilling. He had become the spectacle, not the hero. Crockett didn't smile. She merely sat still, a force of calm truth in the middle of a storm made of words. The chat on the livestream exploded. This is the beginning of the end for him. She just exposed decades of rhetoric with one question. Clip this, share this, save this. Levin stumbled over his words, tried to regain footing, but he couldn't. He had walked into a debate and found himself on trial, and the jury wasn't just the audience, it was the entire digital public. Back in the control booth, a producer whispered urgently into a headset. We didn't plan for this. Keep the cameras tight. Hold on her face. That's the moment. And it was. The moment a titan of traditional media tripped on the weight of his own certainty. The moment Jasmine Crockett moved from promising politician to something greater, something undeniable. By the time the segment ended, the studio audience was buzzing. The live feed counter doubled, then tripled. Everyone wanted to rewatch that single exchange. Slow it down, hear it again. A question that wasn't really a question, but an indictment. And it only took 12 words. Within minutes, the internet went nuclear. It took less than 3 minutes. The clip of Jasmine Crockett asking the question or the question hit Twitter and TikTok before the debate even officially cut to commercial. Someone in the audience had captured it off screen and zoomed in. Grainy, shaky, raw, but the sound was perfect. Mark, if you say you love this country, then why are you more afraid of its future than you are committed to its people? That single line echoed around the internet like a struck bell. On Twitter, the hashtag #WhatAreYouAfraidOf shot to #1 within the hour. Then came Crockett clapback. Then Levin fold. By midnight, the moment had spawned reaction GIFs, parodies, even the beginnings of a remix song on SoundCloud. Influencers chimed in one after another. TikTok creators made split-screen duets reenacting the moment. Someone edited Levin's stuttering reaction into a movie trailer format with dramatic music, slow motion, echo effect on Jasmine's words. It pulled 5 million views in 6 hours. A popular streamer with 10 million followers live reacted to the debate, laughing and pausing the moment frame by frame. Guys, look at his face. He had nothing. His chat flooded with rainbow emojis and flame reactions. On Instagram, a carousel post went viral. A bold text graphic overlaid on Jasmine's face, "Courage isn't loud, it's clear." In the caption, "We watched a patriarch fall tonight. Thank you, Jasmine." Then the celebrities weighed in. An A-list musician quoted the clip and wrote, "She said what needed to be said." A famous actor added, "This isn't just a question, it's an indictment of a whole era." A Pulitzer-winning journalist tweeted, "That one question may reshape how political debates are held." Even political rivals gave props. A well-known senator retweeted the moment with the simple caption. Memes spread faster than facts. One showed Levin's face next to the phrase, "Error 404, confidence not found." Another put him in a mock lineup of defeated villains between a cartoon gas bag and a toppled statue. But it wasn't just schadenfreude. The moment resonated. Thousands of comments said some version of the same thing. "She asked the question I've been screaming at my TV for years. I didn't know how to say it, but she did. This is what accountability looks like." The moment had transcended politics. It became personal, for immigrants who had felt erased, for young voters who'd been told their voices didn't matter, for working parents tired of hearing that any change was dangerous. Someone cropped just Jasmine's face as she delivers the line calm, unflinching, and it became a reaction meme. The caption, "When your uncle starts talking nonsense at Thanksgiving." By morning, Crockett 2024 trended. Not a formal campaign, just a moment, a wink, a hope. Meanwhile, mainstream news was forced to cover it. Cable shows replayed the clip. Analysts sat on panels asking, "Has the debate shifted?" One host put it bluntly. "Was this the question of the decade?" A well-worn pundit waved it off. "It was just a moment, a clever line, it won't last." But the numbers told a different story. On YouTube, a compilation titled "Crockett Humiliates Levin in 12 Words" hit 1 million views before lunchtime. Reddit exploded topped the politics page with the caption, "And this is why you don't underestimate calm leadership." Even meme accounts joined the conversation. A popular Gen Z content creator overlaid the clip with a Spanish guitar sting, captioning it, "POV, you spent your whole career yelling and someone whispered the truth." The internet wasn't just consuming, it was creating around it. Remix culture met political revelation. Fan edits, poetic overlays, animated GIFs, each iteration carried the same message. Something had shifted. And then something else happened. Levin's own official platforms went quiet. No posts, no rebuttals, no attempts at reclaiming the narrative, just a digital void expanding under growing scrutiny. A popular tweet asked, simply, "Did Mark Levin just get humbled out of existence?" A reply beneath it, "Or is he just afraid?" The silence wasn't loud. It was devastating. And Levin silent. The debate didn't end with fireworks. It ended with a breath long, deep, human. Jasmine Crockett didn't celebrate, she didn't gloat. When the cameras swung back to her after the commercial break, she sat poised, looking not at Levin but at the audience. At the millions watching behind screens and timelines. Her voice was softer now, measured, but every word carved itself into the space between noise and clarity. "You know," she began, "I didn't come here tonight to win an argument. I came here to ask a question, not just to Mark," she nodded politely, "but to the people who have been told that fear is the same as patriotism, that yelling is the same as conviction, that drowning out someone else's voice makes yours stronger." A hush fell across the studio. Even the control room paused, not out of respect but recognition. "I was raised to believe that loving this country means loving its people, all of them. Not just the ones who agree with you, not just the ones who look like you. We don't get to choose whom we serve. We don't get to choose which truths we face." She folded her hands, quiet and strong. "I think a lot of us are tired of the shouting, tired of being told that change is chaos, that equality is somehow a threat, that we should be silent to keep someone else comfortable. Tonight wasn't about calling out a person, it was about calling out a pattern." Jasmine turned slightly toward the camera. "We've all watched people like Mark loud, certain, unchallenged shape narratives for years. They say they're defending tradition, but real tradition," she paused, "real tradition grows, it adapts, it makes room for truth." The audience breathed in. A few nodded. Others blinked back something emotional, resonant. Right now across this country, people are asking themselves, "Am I seen? Am I valued?" And too often answers come in the form of noise. accusations, blame. But what if we answered with dignity instead? What if we stopped performing and started listening? She didn't need applause, she had attention. So no, this isn't about winning debates. It's about restoring the idea that conversations, even hard ones, don't have to be weapons. They can be bridges, mirrors, wake-up calls. A spark moved across the crowd. That unknown spark that happens when someone speaks the truth and makes it feel both inevitable and revolutionary. Tonight wasn't a takedown, she said. It was a reminder that power isn't loud, it's steady, it's thoughtful, it's rooted in compassion and justice, not fear. The moderator, moved for the first time all evening, leaned in as if to ask something but paused. The moment was too complete. Jasmine offered a final thought, almost whispered. We all have a choice, every day, to react with fear or respond with courage, to chase applause or earn respect, to shout louder or ask better questions. A beat, then let choose better. The studio stayed still, like someone had pressed pause on the world. What lingered wasn't triumph. It was a challenge. A lesson not just for them, but us. One question, 12 words, and suddenly an entire persona built on decades of bluster and control came undone. Not by shouting, not by spectacle, but by truth spoken calmly in a room trained to prize noise. That's the power of dignity, the power of composure, the power of asking the right question at the right moment. When Jasmine Crockett leaned forward and said what so many of us had been thinking, she didn't just expose one person's hypocrisy, she exposed a culture that rewards certainty over honesty. She reminded us that democracy isn't a spectator sport. It's a conversation, a confrontation, and sometimes it's a mirror held up to the loudest voices in the room. If that moment stirred you, if it made you pause and remember what real leadership looks like, don't let it fade into another trending topic. Share this clip. Send it to someone who still believes volume equals truth. Subscribe, not just to stay informed, but to stay involved. Because change doesn't come from one viral moment, it comes from what we do with it. Let's amplify voices that bring light, not heat. Let's celebrate the courage to ask hard questions and the humility to answer them. That's how we build something lasting. That's how we move forward. The next question is yours.